Police services send out news releases all the time. It's pretty routine. But recently, police shared a much more personal message at the foot of some of its releases. In a full statement from Sarnia Police Chief Derek Davis, he was talking about social issues playing out in the city, like addiction and homelessness and the role police have when responding to them. The comments are attached to a string of incidents, including an indecent act, a person re-arrested just one day after being released, and a case where a family was threatened with a knife. Here's some of Chief Davis's statement. He said, while social issues such as addiction or homelessness may help explain criminal activity, they do not excuse it. Open drug use, indecent acts, theft, and violence are detrimental to our community's safety. These crimes victimize residents, disrupt our small businesses, and interfere with the peace and enjoyment of our neighborhoods. Sarnia's Police Chief Derek Davis is on the line now. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, why did you feel the need to include this in the news releases?
Well, I think it's important that our public understand the approach that we're taking as a police service. Ultimately, we're accountable to the community that we serve, and the issues that we're facing in terms of social disorder, highly emotional, lots of people with really strong perspectives on both sides of the fence, some people calling for enforcement and a lack of tolerance, others calling for compassionate responses. And as a police service, because we're highly visible, we end up taking a lot of the heat for issues that we don't necessarily control. So the approach we've taken here at the Sarnia Police Service is we are refocusing on our core business, which is the criminal investigation, criminal enforcement component, but we have also added another parallel course that provides support, outreach, and some of those components. So a lot of complexity there, and happy to talk about some of those pieces.
Yeah, let's go through some of those, because I think what, at least from where I'm sitting and the conversations I've had over the years, policing has changed from, as you've mentioned, enforcing the law to sort of navigating mental health and building relationships with people you deal with often. And that's not something I think the general public understands. Can you explain how it has changed and how you're sort of being moved into an area that isn't necessarily your job?
Well, ultimately everything flows down to the agency of last resort, which is the police service. So we catch those disorder issues. If there's an encampment somewhere, people call the police. That doesn't mean the police created the encampment, permitted the encampment, enabled the encampment. It's just, who else do you call at the end of the day? So because we're there, visible with those issues, they tend to be attributed to us, and that's part of our challenge. So the perspective we're trying to shift a little bit, certainly in our community, is that there's a lot of agencies that are going to be required to solution some of these complex issues. And we as a police service are one of those agencies. We are not the only one. We're just one of many. We can help our partners. We can support with information sharing. We can provide referrals, resources. But at the end of the day, we are also responsible for the safety of everyone else in the community. The homeowner has a right to enjoy their property. People should be able to go to the store and, not fear any type of harassment or having things stolen from them. So we have an entire other level of our community that we're responsible for that we also need to pay some attention to, because a lot of the focus tends to be right on the offenders, and we forget about the other victims that are ancillary to some of those issues.
Yeah, and what message do you want to get across about that?
Well, the key message is we're looking out for all of our community members, housed, unhoused, whatever that happens to be. Everyone has a unique story. Everyone's a unique individual. But at the end of the day, our community needs to be safe. Our community members need to be able to go to the park. They need to be able to take their kids to the playground. They need to be able to go grocery shopping and do so with a sense of safety. And some of those social disorder issues, we're seeing a lot of challenges to that type of lifestyle. So we are increasing our enforcement in terms of quality of life issues in our city. And we are also expanding our supports to those in need who want resources or want help. And not everyone does.
How do you strike that balance between enforcing the law and addressing the root cause of the behaviors?
So I think there's a couple of different approaches. One is crime is crime. And we have to deal with, if someone decides to commit a criminal offense, we have to deal with that. But that doesn't mean we need to stop there. We can look at the person's individual circumstances. Like if a person was an alcoholic, for example, we can make referral to different support services or different treatment centers for them as part of the criminal enforcement. So it doesn't need to occur in isolation. It's not necessarily a binary decision of charge or don't charge. We can integrate some of those different components, but the key for us is we're not removing the criminal culpability for some of these offenses.
Some of the news releases also include the number of times a person's been arrested and charged, which is something we don't often see when we get these news releases. So it would say, for example, this person was arrested this many times in the past year. This is their 15th arrest, their 21st breach of probation. Why do you think it's important to put it into context for people?
So I think this is important because police are human too. We're frustrated as well. We deal with the same people on a recurring basis, and sometimes as human beings, you can throw your arms up and say, why do we bother? But that's not our approach. We're taking a philosophical position where we will do our part as the police service. If someone violates their court conditions or commits a crime, we'll hold them accountable to the extent the police are permitted. We'll make the arrest, we'll lay the charge, we'll hold people for bail as necessary, and what happens after that, we have no control over. But we want the public to know that in terms of the Sarnia Police Service, we are making every effort we can within the authorities that we have and the resources that we have to do what we can do to help keep our community safe. And part of those statements that we put out there shows the number of times a small handful of people consume disproportionate amount of resources.
Have you had any response from people who maybe weren't aware of how often you're dealing with the same population?
We've had response. I think as certainly as a police chief and certainly as a police service, we take shots from both sides of the fence there. We have people that are, not impressed with our enforcement approach, and that's okay. They're entitled to their opinion. But I do think the majority of our public and the majority of the residents that are living with these issues of crime in their life and their daily activity are happy to see the police service taking a more assertive approach, but not excluding the opportunity to be compassionate when possible.
All right, Chief. Thanks so much for your time this morning and for helping people understand. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
That's Sarnia Police Chief Derek Davis.